everyone. Welcome back to another episode with the Crime and Coffee Couple. My name's Allison.
And my name is Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Al, how are you?
I'm doing quite well. How are you?
Good. You look good and fresh-faced, ish. I mean, not super fresh-faced. You probably haven't showered in a little while, but that's all right.
I got a workout in, and it's a good time to record. So I'm like, you know what? We're going to throw a hat on this head, and we're going to call it a day.
Yeah, you got a brand new hat. How about that?
So I apologize for the way that I look if you're watching this on YouTube.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes to say every single time.
Yeah,
so
I don't need to say that because I apologize for the way I look every day.
I was going to say we're not supermodels, but you could be a supermodel.
Oh, yeah.
For those under
absolutely
5'3" and under, I think that would be great. And I am definitely not a supermodel, but you know what? I've accepted who I am in life, and that's
you
okay.
are who you are, and that's who you are.
Yeah.
So we got through a hurricane.
Yeah, we got through pretty much scot-free outside of losing the power for 3 hours.
Yeah, it was pretty wild weather for about 2 hours, I'd say.
Yeah, and unfortunately, a lot of people are affected and closer to the water. We're far enough away from the water where it doesn't affect us flooding-wise and all that. But it sounds like there's some bad stuff in Tennessee and North Carolina.
Yeah, scary. So sad for the people who are, basically their houses are demolished, their businesses, etc.
Yeah, it looks like total devastation, like some really areas we've traveled to and stuff. Really, really sad stuff. So hopefully everybody's safe and healthy out there as much as you can be.
And then our son turned 16.
Yeah, lots of stuff going on in the Pernecki household.
Yeah, and I'm just such not a detail-oriented person.
You are, though.
Like we always ask the kids, do you want us to cook you something? You want to choose what you want? No, I'm really not, though. I'm good with big picture. So our son was like, no, I want takeout. And then I'd like a peanut butter brownie for my birthday. So me and our daughter, we made it from scratch. And then as it's like coming around to dinner time, I'm like scurrying around looking for candles. I'm like, crap. I don't think I have a single birthday candle in this house.
That is something that happens a lot around here, and that's okay. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so he had 2 tea lights on his brownies for his birthday.
You got to make do. You know what?
But you know what? He survived.
Yeah, and he didn't have a cake either. He wanted brownies, and sometimes we just get like something, random too.
Blizzards for me.
Ice cream sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just sing to that. It's just about recognizing the person, so don't feel like you got to get a cake or whatever.
And then his like birthday gift bags. One was from Valentine's Day. One was from Christmas. One was turquoise with sparkly circles on it.
I don't know if you guys are like us, but we just keep every single gift bag. That way we never have to buy a gift bag. So we've got different shapes, sizes, holidays, and we've all decided like who cares what it says on the outside of the bag. Let's just give it to them. Yeah.
And I'm also not a card person.
Oh, thank God. That took a while to break you down because you were a card person. Remember?
Yeah, I was when we were like in high school. I remember you disappeared and I was like, where are you? And you were in the bathroom. And I don't know. I was so curious to know what you were doing. So I looked under the door. I was laughing when I did it. It's not like I was spying on you.
Well, you're looking for
Lord knows I don't want to see the horrors of what go on in there.
Mr. Picklesworth is what you're looking for.
But I saw that your feet were like at the bathroom sink. And I'm like, what are you doing in there? And you were writing my birthday card. And you confessed to me how much you hate birthday cards.
Yeah, it's just an extra step. It's like, okay, I thought of you with the gift and I'm really excited to give it to you and have a conversation. Like, why do I have to put it in a card? Like, there's some people, like you were really, I don't know if your parents raised you that way.
Yeah, my parents are huge on cards.
Okay. So, and that's how they basically tell each other how they love each other is through the card. So, I'm just like, man, I don't want, you guys know me. If you've listened to this, podcast for a month or so, I'm cheap. So I go to the card store. It's like $6 for freaking cardboard that says, I love you and you're a peach and here's the niche. And
I've never seen that on a card before, ever.
Because you don't buy
love
cards.
you, you're a peach and you're a niche.
I was trying to rhyme and I couldn't find one.
Terrible. Do not go into the greeting card business.
Peach beach, I think would be better.
But even me not being a cheap person such as yourself or frugal, as we might call Mike, even I scoff at the prices of cards.
And back in my day, you used to be able to walk around the card area and get like 99-cent cards for in the shoebox area or at the gifts, those party stores. But no more. Now it's like $2.99 or $3.99. Where does the madness end, people?
Where does it end?
Yeah, I'm not here for it. So forget it. If you want, like, I started just making like paper and like writing on it.
I do like a card though with heartfelt, genuine words.
I hate when people use the words in cards to like try to show their feelings. It's like, you did not write that. Like,
no, when they write independently,
for
not
sure.
the words of the cards.
Right, well,
that doesn't touch me per se. It might a little bit. But like our son wrote me a beautiful birthday card for my birthday this past year. And it really brought tears to my eyes. When I say tears to my eyes, I was crying. It was just like the sweetest thing ever because he's a 15-year-old boy, now 16, and he's guarded, not necessarily always free with his emotions.
Almost never.
I said to him, I'm like, you do love me. I know he loves me. But.
And it's one of those things. You got to coach them a little bit. Just be like, just whatever you're truly feeling is going to mean the most. Even if it's like sounds kind of basic, if as long as it sounds like your authentic voice talking to the person, then that really matters. I always think back to, I used to work at a different company a couple of years back. And one of the coworkers' girls' moms died, and I was brand new there, and I was like, so I guess all I wrote down was just like, hey, I haven't known you long, but I can't even imagine like the pain. I don't even remember what it was, but it was just like actually what I was feeling, and it was honest, and it wasn't like thoughts and prayers and this and that, which is fine for some people, but I was just like, if you want to talk about anything random to the new guy, and get your mind off things, like come on and do it. And she was like, you know what? Like afterwards, she was like, yours like somehow meant like one of the most of this whole thing. And I was like, I was just telling you like how I would feel. And I mean, I have no idea how I would feel. And I can only, I feel pain for you. And even though I don't know you,
Well, it's all from the heart. And that's the thing. I have to be genuine. I cannot fake it. I am not a fake it kind of gal. So unless it's genuine, I can't do it.
Yeah. And
otherwise, it just seems cold.
The world craves authenticity, which is kind of what we try to do on this podcast. Like we are these people. We're just a couple like dorky like suburbanites, just talking about these horrible events. And we try to respect these victims as much as possible, even if they make some bad decisions. It's like we're all human beings, man. Like
it doesn't matter, what put you in the situation you were in. You don't deserve to be, anything bad to happen to you like that. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a heartbreaking thing. Like I say, I work in the true crime podcast and then the hospital. So it's like always the worst scenarios of what people are going through in life.
Yeah,
so.
Which is nice to be around constantly.
And change of subject, we are officially celebrating our third podiversary.
Third podiversary. Woo!
Woo! What was it, 2021?
Was it?
Yeah, September 30th, 2021. What do we got going over here, Mike?
I'm looking for sound effects, but I don't know if I'm going to find it.
You're dropping the ball on this one tremendously.
You just got to pick up. Start talking. Come on. Talk.
So, yeah, I can't believe...
There we go.
I can't believe 3 years has actually gone by.
We got a studio audience. All right,
we do.
Guys.
You guys, okay, come on, we're recording. Okay, keep it down back there.
Yeah.
You in the back, keep it down.
And I want to say that I kind of feel like we're exactly where I thought we would be. Thanks to listeners like you who are listening to this right now, or watching this, or consuming this, however you are. Just keep on telling your friends and family and coworkers and stuff. And I think we went from celebrating 10,000 total downloads in like the whole podcast because we all went out to dinner. We're like, yay, we got to 10,000 years ago. To now, I get weekly updates. It's like well over 10,000 per week. So 17, 18,000, whatever. I don't. It's if any of our podcast friends that are listening want to reach out to me for those details, I'll share them. But it's just like it's way more, and it's like we're gonna keep on just being authentic and bringing these horrible stories to people and trying to, if we can all like learn something or like just remember these people at the very least, their stories deserve to be told.
Yeah,
even though they're not with us anymore, a lot of them.
And on that note, are you ready to get started?
I am.
All right. So this is the murders of Heather Barnett and Elisa Claps. So this is a listener suggestion from two people. This is from Morgan and Joe. So thank you guys so much. So Bournemouth, England was found to be one of the happiest places in the UK, with 82% of those polled expressing happiness with where they lived. However, in 2002, the town was stricken with fear when they learned that a woman had been brutally murdered in her home at 211 Capstone Road. Her mutilated body ended up being discovered by her children when they came home from school that day.
That's so bad. I mean, it's bad any way you can slice it, but I mean, these kids are going to be
traumatized
their whole life.
Like the person that they love the most in life, they saw their brutalized body with their own eyes. I mean, how do you recover from that?
Me as an adult, I don't even want to see that for a stranger, and it's like your own mother.
Yes. So investigators eventually realized that this horrific case was tied to an unsolved murder that happened 9 years earlier and nearly 1,500 miles or 2,400 kilometers away in Potenza, Italy. I'm including the kilometers too because one of our listeners was like, hey, can you put that in kilometers? It's like, of course, I live in the United States where we do our own thing over here.
We're just thinking about ourselves. So yeah, we definitely can do that. And good job.
So not only was this beyond tragic, but who would have thought it would be somehow tied to something that happened close to a decade earlier in 1,500 miles away?
Yeah, crazy.
So Heather Barnett was described as a hardworking, independent mother of two. She did anything that she could to help others. She was just a selfless, down-to-earth, giving person.
Independent, so no husband.
No, she was divorced or separated. So she had been in a relationship with David Marsh, and during that time, the couple had two children. They had their son Terry in 1987, and their daughter Caitlin was born in 1991. The couple went on to separate in the early 1990s, so Heather was living on her own with the kids. I don't know what the custody situation was or anything like that. So at about 4 p.m. on Tuesday, November 12th, 2002, Heather's children, this is now 14-year-old Terry and his 11-year-old sister, Caitlin Marsh, they came home from school, as they did every single day. They entered their ground floor apartment in Bournemouth, Dorset, England. And their mother, 48-year-old Heather Barnett, she worked from home as a seamstress. So they walked through the door every day and their mom was there. That was just normal for them. But that day, they walked into their apartment and it was eerily quiet and their mother was nowhere in sight. So right away, this was immediately strange to them. So the apartment situated above Heather's housed her former mother-in-law and her grandmother. So Terry is heading toward his bedroom to change his clothes, and in the meantime, Caitlin was calling out to her mother looking for her, but she got no reply. So when she noticed that the bathroom door was closed, she just made the assumption that her mother must be in there. So she knocked on the door, but she didn't hear anything. So with that, she began to open the door, and there was, again, as she's opening the door, she's saying, "Mom, are you in here?" But it's quiet. And this was when Terry heard his sister screaming in a way he had never heard before. And he ran over to see what was going on, and he found his mom laying on her back on the bathroom floor. And it was immediately evident. There was no question that Heather was dead. Blood was everywhere, and Heather had been stabbed and mutilated. In a state of extreme panic and distress, the siblings called police and ran from the house. Their neighbor was an Italian man named Danilo or Danny Restivo, and he lived in the house opposite with his girlfriend, and they immediately came upon to comfort them, hearing their screams. He pulled up outside the home as the sobbing and screaming children ran out. He ended up bringing them to his home so that they could wait there for the police to arrive. Another neighbor recalled hearing the children scream, "Mummy's dead. She has been cut up." When investigators, which included forensic experts, arrived at the home, it was obvious that this had been an exceptionally violent and bizarre murder. There were no signs of forced entry in the home. Heather was known to be diligent about keeping the doors locked when she was home. So, that in itself was a little odd. This initially suggested the possibility that she willingly allowed her killer into the home. Perhaps she knew her killer.
Yep.
So based on the blood spatter that was located on the patio doors of Heather's sewing room, this is where she spent the bulk of her day, working, sewing, whatever it was she was working on. It was determined that this was where she was initially attacked. Then there was long stains of blood that led through the apartment to the bathroom where her body was ultimately located. So this indicated that she was attacked in the sewing room and then dragged to the spot where she was found in the bathroom. So it was probably that she was either unconscious or already deceased at the time that she was being dragged. So the medical examiner was Dr. Alan Anscombe, and he arrived at Heather's apartment at 8:45 p.m., and I am going to give some details as to what happened to Heather's body and, how she was killed. So if you would like to skip ahead maybe a minute, you could do that. So he found her lying on her back in the bathroom on the floor. Her legs were outstretched. Her bra had been cut between the cups, and both of her breasts had been severed from her body and left on the bathroom floor on either side of her head.
That's nuts, man.
Just horrible.
Yeah.
Her throat had been slashed from ear to ear, and strands of light brown hair were found clutched in Heather's right hand, which rested on her abdomen. It was later discovered that these strands of hair did not belong to her. So, of course, the investigators are thinking, okay, well, whose hair is it? Did she yank on the hair of her attacker? About 30 strands of her own hair were found in her left hand. Her head had been battered with a hammer-like object 10 times, and some of the injuries to her body occurred after she died. So this monster who did what they did to Heather, they were a violent lunatic. They continued to strike her even after she had been deceased.
Yeah, just absolutely brutal.
And according to the medical examiner, none of the injuries were random. They all appeared to have been carried out with a degree of care and control, which just makes it that much more chilling, I think.
Yeah, for sure. This is somebody who's like calculated and like a pro almost. You hate to say it, but also with the strands of hair, like it's almost like too easy. Like, you know, the one was hers, the other one wasn't. It's almost like the killer wants you to find this and wants to throw you off.
Right.
I'm curious to hear what that's all about.
Right. So in a sense, it looked like the person was just a deranged lunatic, deranged lunatic. But then as you looked closer, it did seem more calculated than it, appeared.
It's not a random just, insanity. It's like, no, this is planned out.
Which is almost more chilling because the person was like getting off on what they were doing to this single mother of two that was just a humble person that worked out of her home, sewing.
Right.
It's just like, what was the purpose of this?
Yep.
So the clothing she wore on her upper body had been pulled up to the level of her breasts. Her pants had been opened and slightly pulled down. Contact stains were found on her underwear with what investigators believed was a blood-saturated glove, though Heather had not been sexually assaulted. It didn't omit the fact that this was sexually driven.
Sure.
Because otherwise, why would they have unbuttoned her pants and kind of pulled them down? Why would they have mutilated her breasts?
Right.
Whoever did this was definitely had a sexual element to it.
Sorry if you skipped ahead 1 minute and had to hear that again.
Yeah, I apologize, but investigators utilized luminol and they found bloodied footprints that led away from the bathroom toward the sewing room. And with each step, the prints grew fainter until they suddenly stopped. So in the hallway toward the front door, there were no signs of blood. So this told investigators that the murderer had changed their shoes at that point in time because the blood is trailing, which would be natural as you continue to walk. The stains get fainter and fainter, and then they just suddenly stopped. So at that point in time, it was determined that the killer changed his shoes. And they also likely wore gloves to avoid forensic contamination because it's not like there was a bunch of fingerprints found. The shoes were determined to eventually, they found out that these had been Nike Terra trainers in a size 9.5 to 10.5. So police learned that the last known sighting of Heather alive was after she dropped her children off at school. CCTV footage captured her white Fiat Punto turning onto Capstone Road. It was at 8:37 a.m. So based on the evidence at the scene, as well as phone calls that went unanswered, they could basically narrow down the timeline that she was likely murdered soon after she was last seen at 8:37 a.m. coming back from dropping her kids off. So based on the fact that neighbors had not noticed any strangers wandering around at the time of the murder, as well as the fact that Heather was murdered shortly after returning home, this led investigators to believe that the killer had a connection to her. They were likely familiar with her routine, her comings and goings, what time to expect her home.
Yeah.
So that kind of solidifies more so that she may have known this person.
Yeah, let them in and be like, oh yeah, or maybe was working on something for them as a seamstress or whatever.
Exactly. So investigators spoke with Terry, who indicated, of course, this is her son, who indicated that his mom's keys had gone missing 1 week earlier. So then you could start to think, okay, so maybe you saw no sign of forced entry because the person utilized the keys.
Yeah, was that just bad timing or was it planned?
Right. So Terry is specifically saying that his mom had hung the key over the door handle as a reminder for him and his sister to take it with them when they were leaving for school. That was just the routine. The key suddenly disappeared after their Italian neighbor. This is Danny. This is the one that was comforting them when they ran from the house screaming.
Well, also you said something in Italy and like the Italian neighbor. I'm like, we're still in England here.
Yeah, we're in England.
Super rare, but okay.
So Danny came over on November 6th to ask Heather to make curtains for him since he had planned to give the curtains to his girlfriend as a Christmas present. So Heather was so concerned about the keys that she wrote a letter to his girlfriend asking her if she had seen the keys. So she wrote, Fiamma, Dan popped over to see me this morning regarding a surprise for you. Don't ask questions and spoil it. I have a spare door key for Terry out on a table, and I think Dan must have picked it up inadvertently as I have turned the place upside down and I can't find it anywhere.
Well, especially knowing that Heather's the person that's very secure, like this is probably making her insane.
Right. And when you live in a house with 3 people, it's like you turn to your 2 children. Heather knows she didn't take the key. You turn to your 11-year-old daughter and your 14-year-old son. Hey, did you guys see the key? No, I didn't. It was last there. I put it there. Okay, so what the hell happened to it? Like, that would make me crazy too. It's like, well, it's got to be here. So she didn't know what happened to the key. So when police were canvassing the neighborhood to speak with the neighbors 5 days after Heather's murder, they went to Danny Restivo's home and they asked him to show them the shoes that he wore on November 12th, the day that Heather was murdered.
Oof, you know exactly what they're looking for.
Yep. And it was at that point that they found his Nike trainers.
Oh.
And where were his Nike trainers when they were asking for him? Well, they were soaking in a bathtub and the room smelled very distinctly of bleach. And he explained that he was cleaning his shoes because they had just simply gotten dirty. He later changed his story and said that he decided to clean the shoes because his girlfriend complained that they stunk. So he indicated that he had no idea that he was utilizing bleach to clean them. He assumed it was just soap that was used for cleaning the floor. He's like, I just grabbed something. I don't know. So
I don't know. It says bleach. I don't know if it's bleach or not.
The shoes were taken and they were eventually found to have traces of blood that were invisible to the naked eye, found inside the shoes, as if maybe a bloodied sock had been put into the shoe. You know, somebody that had bloody feet wearing socks put their shoes back on. However, it had not been possible to extract a DNA sample from what they saw. They could only determine that there were traces of blood. So as police began to look into Danny's background, they learned that he was born in Sicily on April 3rd, 1972, but he moved to Potenza in southern Italy where his father was hired to set up a library in the area. In May of 2002, he moved to Bournemouth, to the house where he lived at the time, that Heather was murdered. It was just across the street from Heather's. And this had only been 6 months that he had been living there in the time before Heather was murdered. So he moved to England to live with an Italian woman that he met online. So police indicated that from day one, Danny was a suspect since he had arrived at the scene right away with the kids.
Again, man, thank God for stupid criminals, allegedly.
So he was comforting both children who were taken into his home as investigators scoured the crime scene. He told investigators that when the kids came running out, he immediately started to hug and comfort them while they were in distress. So they are asking Terry and Caitlin what happened. And Caitlin said, no, he never touched us. So this made investigators believe that he just made this story up so that in case there was some sort of DNA transfer, it could be explained away by him saying, I was comforting the kids. Yeah. So he basically used the kids as pawns in this murder, knowing that they would be the ones to come home and see their mother's body. He knew when the kids came home from school.
Well, also, I would imagine that he wanted to make it look like he's a good guy.
True.
Like I wanted to take care of them, the poor kids. I didn't know, their poor mother was dead, so I wanted to, comfort them as much as possible. It's like they'll never look at me as the possible murderer.
Right. It could be multifaceted, but I do think he wanted to have some reason to say why Heather's DNA could have been found on him, because he'd say, well, I was comforting the kids.
Got it, yeah.
So the fact that this monster knew when the kids would come home from school, he just so happened to be pulling up right at that time. So he timed it so that he could be there knowing they would come running out of the house screaming.
Well, and another thing, I was picturing like if something happened in our neighborhood, and we know the local kids, we said hi to one the other day. Like my first instinct wouldn't be to hug the kid because like I would if they wanted it,
right.
But I wouldn't like try to, I don't know what they want. So it's just like, hey, I'd like rub, touch their shoulder, be like, everything's going to be all right. No, like I'd stay there for security. But like they wouldn't run into my arms. And this guy's only lived there 6 months. Like these kids don't know him that well.
Right. And obviously you would take the cue of what that child potentially needed.
I'll give them whatever they need.
But it's just another red flag that he's saying that he hugged the kids and then they asked the kids and they're like, no, he never hugged us.
And that's really strong by Caitlin to be like, nope, never happened.
Right. So investigators believe that the person who killed Heather was a crazed lunatic.
Yeah.
Since she had been killed in such a violent way. And the more they spoke with Danny, they perceived him as, quote, a local bumbling idiot. And if you look at this guy online, oh gosh.
Oh, so you're judging by his looks?
No, I'm judging him by the fact that he's a monster.
Okay.
So Heather's killer would have been calculated and prepared. Of course, like I said, once they started really looking into the case and conducting her autopsy, they did realize that it wasn't just crazed. It was calculated. So now it's like, okay, well, we look at Danny as this bumbling idiot. Could he have had the wherewithal to do it?
So he's like, he's such an idiot. I don't know if he would be able to plan this out.
So the person would have come to Heather's home with a hammer, someone else's hair, a change of clothing and shoes, potentially a scalpel to mutilate her body. So when officers searched the internet in 2003, they discovered that Danny, who they're already thinking has something to do with Heather's case, was linked to the 1993 disappearance of an Italian 16-year-old girl named Alisa Claps. And this happened in Potenza, Italy. So when they spoke with him about Alisa, he admitted that he had met her on the very day that she was last seen at a church. And when I say he met her on the very day, he was like the last person to have seen her. So this is the Most Holy Trinity Church in Potenza. At the time of her disappearance, Danny was 21 years old. The two had at one point gone to the same school. Alisa was in her third year of high school. She hoped to one day become a doctor. That was her dream in life. She was the youngest of 3 children. She was extremely close with her family. And those that knew her described her as just a sweet, happy-go-lucky girl. So some of Alisa's friends later told investigators that she was just a very compassionate, kind person. So she looked at Danny and she just kind of felt sorry for him.
Yeah, I'm sure he probably didn't have a lot of friends.
No.
Yeah.
So she wanted to be, the type of person to show kindness to him. So he seemed lonely and depressed, and she just wanted to be a nice person to him. So on Saturday, September 11th, 1993, Danny called Alisa, and she reluctantly agreed to meet him the following day at the church. He said he wanted to give her a gift. And he said he wanted to thank her for helping him get together with one of her friends. The following day was now Sunday, September 12th, 1993, and Alisa arrived at the church at 11:30 a.m. just as Mass was coming to an end, which means, of course, everyone is leaving. So when she didn't come home as expected, her brother called Danny's family, and they said he left town. I don't know if he was going back to school or what was happening. They had no idea where Alisa was. So Danny ended up giving a statement to police that day. He indicated that, yes, he had met with Alisa at the church. They talked for about 15 minutes, according to Danny. He said that he saw her out of the church at 11:50 a.m. and then she left and he last saw her. She was alive. She was well. He came back inside. He stayed at the church for another 10 minutes in order to pray, and then he left, and that was the end of it. So later on the day that Alisa went missing, Danny's sister's boyfriend, this is Giovanni, he was at the Restivo home and indicated that between 1 and 1:10 p.m., he saw Danny walking back toward the home and described his demeanor as very agitated. Danny also asked Giovanni if he could take him to the hospital, and he referenced a cut on his hand. So, Giovanni is looking at this wound and he noticed, yeah, the cut was bleeding, but not enough to take somebody to the hospital. It's like, dude, put a Band-Aid on.
Right.
So Danny told him that he injured his hand on an escalator, and Giovanni noticed that Danny's clothing was soaking wet despite the fact that it was not raining outside. So just an odd situation. He's coming home agitated. He's got this little cut on his hand that he's asking to go to the hospital for, and he's soaking wet on a dry day. What's going on?
Yeah.
So in 1995, this is 2 years after Alisa went missing, Danny was convicted in Italy for giving false information about what happened to his hand on the day that she vanished. So police as well as the Italian media were convinced that he was responsible for whatever happened to Alisa. But because there was no solid proof to it, they couldn't do anything about it. They know this guy has something to do with whatever happened to Alisa. They can't find her. They don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But they have to let him go.
Right.
So in Heather's case, Danny had an alibi. He indicated that he was at a computer class at the time of her murder. He said that he left home between 8:10 and 8:20 a.m. He bought a bus ticket at 8:44 a.m. in Charminster. However, it was theorized that he only purchased the ticket simply to establish this alibi.
100%. Like, you got to prove that you were there too. You
Right.
know, like somebody's got to say, yes, I talked to him.
Right.
Like, if you're in a class, like, do you remember this little piece of garbage village idiot that was in this class?
Bumbling idiot.
Yeah.
So he could have obviously easily not gotten on the bus at all, or even just gotten on and gotten off at the next stop. And either way, he could have easily walked to Heather's house, and it would have only taken him minutes to do so.
Oh, so it was local.
It was local, yes. And what did I say? Heather was last seen at like 8:37 a.m.
Yeah.
So that's right within this time frame. So police believe that he was back at Heather's home by 8:55 a.m., where he murdered and mutilated her. He changed his clothing. He was back on Charminster Road by 9:24 a.m. So very quick. So CCTV footage captured a man crossing Charminster Road, and it looked like him, and then a shop worker identified that, yes, this was Danny.
Nice.
So it's kind of establishing a potential timeline. So according to Danny, he arrived for the training course at 9 a.m. He said he immediately logged onto the computer. However, a particular computer at Necro, where he claimed to be that day, had not been used between 9:09 and 10:10 a.m. So, things are looking not so good for Danny.
You said you did and you didn't. So this is garbage.
So police still felt that the evidence was lacking and they couldn't make an arrest, despite the fact that they were certain that he was responsible for Heather's murder.
Yeah, you got to place him there.
Right. So with the information about his link to Alisa Claps, he was placed under surveillance starting in May of 2004.
Yes.
This is concerning what police end up seeing while putting this guy under surveillance.
So this is starting in May 2004.
Yes.
This is almost 2 years later. Holy cow.
Yes, because it wasn't until 2003 that they even knew there was anything between him and what happened to Alisa in Italy.
Oh, I thought it was like immediately. Oh,
no.
Okay, gotcha.
So what they're seeing this guy doing is very alarming. He had a habit of going to secluded local parks and clearly observing and watching women. So police filmed Danny watching single women, sometimes even ducking into the tall grass to hide his presence. Very
super
creepy as all get out.
Yeah.
So despite the fact that it was spring, he wore gloves and waterproof clothing on a dry, warm day. He also changed his shoes and the shirt that he wore to an identical one that he stored in the trunk of his car. So on one occasion, while he was being monitored, which incidentally just happened to be the 12th of the month, this is the same day of the month that both Heather had been murdered and Alisa disappeared.
Interesting.
Police were concerned enough to call in backup, and both Danny and his car were searched. Inside, they found a filleting knife, 2 pairs of scissors, a balaclava, and gloves. So none of these items were illegal to have on their person.
Right. It's not illegal to sit there and look at girls like a creep. You know,
Right.
It's like these are all things that are super creepy and wrong and horrible, and you're going to do something. But what sucks is like we have no idea how to fast forward. Like we can't just fast forward and be like, oh yeah, you were going to murder them.
So what in the hell do you have a filleting knife, scissors, and a balaclava in your effing trunk for?
And for those that I just learned what a balaclava was recently, that's like a mask.
Yeah, it's like a ninja mask. Yeah. So these were very incriminating items, and the police believed that he could literally be on the verge of killing another person
Like
at
they
this
were
point.
potentially going to watch it happen, and like they can't just sit there and watch.
Right. Sometimes, though, he was being monitored 24/7 because they were so concerned with the well-being of these innocent people who are just going on and living their lives.
Like he's going to give it to someone.
Yes.
And we can't just sit here and watch.
Yes. So the woman Danny had relocated to England for. So this is an Italian woman. This is Fiamma Marsango. She had 2 sons from a previous marriage. So now police start doing covert recordings from the home, and they revealed that they had a very strange, weird relationship. It was more parent-child than it was partner.
And what was their ages?
Fiamma and Danny, they're
same.
probably close in age. There was no mention of that, but they could hear Fiamma scolding Danny as he was a child. She was accusing him of lying. She also had to coax him into learning English. It's like, dude, you're an adult.
Right.
Why is your girlfriend needing to scold you as if she's your child or your mother?
Some guys are just weak, and like some people are just weak and they need to be told what to do all the time.
So they could also hear him speaking with his parents in Italy as if, they're talking to him as if he's a small child.
Wow.
Very bizarre.
So it must be very low IQ.
They didn't mention that. And the person who had done what he had done, this was very well thought out.
Yeah.
So I don't think so. So on September 12th, 2006, this is nearly 4 years after Heather's murder, her case appeared on the BBC show This Is Crime Watch. So with this, police learned that Danny had a strange fascination with hair. And if you can recall what was found at Heather's crime scene, hair from an unknown person in one hand, hair from herself in the other.
I mean, obviously the police are holding on to this hair.
Right. So after the show aired, women called in and investigators discovered that police reports were made by 15 women in the UK and 9 women from Italy came forward regarding incidents that involved their hair being cut. So while the women were traveling by bus or sitting in a movie theater, they realized that a man that was sitting behind them had cut a piece of their hair.
Oh my God, that's so creepy.
Now, this is really creepy. So during one incident, a woman felt like her hair being touched. So of course your instinct is to reach back.
Sure.
She does, and she finds something white and sticky in her hair. Yeah. After it had been cut. So this is happening all at once. She's feeling this like, what the hell is happening?
So he's got a special fascination with
Yes.
hair.
So as this is happening, another man sees Danny sitting behind this woman on the bus. He's holding her hair in his hands, and his hands are disguised under a jacket. And the assumption was made that he had been pleasuring himself while on the bus after cutting this woman's hair.
Just in case it wasn't abundantly clear.
Yes. So during a secret recording of his home, Danny could be heard speaking of his love of hair. And he said, "When I touch the hair, hold them in my hand, then everything is visible, everything."
Oh my God. Like, just end him, man. Just like something was wrong when he was created, right? Like, we can all agree on that. Like, this,
Yeah.
like everybody's weird, right, in their own ways. But this, like, you're starting to get out in the public and cutting people and murdering people, by the way. This guy needs to be wiped.
Well, you will soon learn that this started even when he was a teen.
No doubt. I'm sure it's been his whole life once he became sexually awakened.
So obviously, police are just finding this to be another damning, disgusting layer of the cake that the hair was involved in Heather's murder. And this man is fascinated with hair. And there's so many cases where women came forward to say, he cut my hair while he was sitting behind me.
Yeah.
So it was discovered that Danny also had a long record for sadism. So at only 14 years old, he tied up 2 boys in the courtyard outside the city library where his father was working as a director, and he tortured these boys at age 14.
And that wasn't on his record or something? Or?
So in the process, and I'll tell you what happened, he cut their bodies with a small knife. I mean, this is incredibly concerning that a teenager is doing this.
Like you hear these stories about like little boys that like, mutilate animals, right? That's something troubling. But then it's like 2 boys. Like, you're doing this to 2 humans. Not that it's like, we should treat all lives with respect, but it's like, this is actually breaking the law.
It's highly disturbing. So the boys' families went on to drop the charges against him in return for 1 million lira. I think I'm saying that right. So at the time, this was equivalent to about $29,500 US.
That's tough. You can't judge them for that. Maybe they're on really hard times and they're, whatever.
People have to do what they have to do to survive.
Yeah, but man, if they would have just gone after him.
So he was also a voyeur. He would watch young students that lived across from him, and then he would call them to describe how their clothing and their movements had excited him.
What a freaking weirdo.
So police hoped to figure out who the hair belonged to that they found clutched in Heather's right hand. Extensive examination of the hair revealed that whoever the hair belonged to, and this is really interesting that they could determine this, had been to Florida and Spain or southern France shortly before the hair was taken.
So Florida and Spain or southern France?
Yes.
Okay.
So Florida and Spain or southern France. It also indicated that they had changed diets, which I don't know exactly what that means.
Fascinating.
But despite appeals on Crime Watch and taking multiple trips to Italy in order to obtain DNA samples, because obviously they're going to talk to the people who came forward to report that Danny had cut their hair, they ruled all of those people out.
Well, you're kind of on a wild goose chase, to a certain extent, because the guy, these are just the people that have like reported it. Like,
Right.
how many has he taken from? They had no idea.
Of course. So the source of the hair that was found in Heather's hand was never determined to like who it belonged to.
What sucks for police, it has a special meaning to him, right? Probably.
Of course.
There's a good chance. And it's like it's close somewhere, but you just like it's right under your nose, but you don't know where. And that's frustrating.
So then when Danny's apartment was searched in November of 2006, investigators discovered a lock of hair that was tied with green cotton in a Tesco bag that was hidden under a dresser. Of course, when Danny is confronted with this evidence, he claimed that the police had just planted it there. So more damning, investigators found a green towel in Heather's home that they found draped over the back of a chair, and it revealed a DNA profile that was compatible with Danny's. The chances that the DNA came from anyone other than Danny were 57,000 to 1. So when initially confronted with this fact, he said that he had never seen the towel before, but now, of course, he's being confronted with the fact that your DNA was found on this towel. So now he's got to come up with some sort of story, which he did. By the following day, he seemingly came up with another explanation overnight and spoke of something he failed to previously mention. He said that he had been inside Heather's home in order to discuss the curtains that he hoped she could make for him, and he had utilized the towel as a color match for the curtains that he was ordering for his girlfriend. Obviously, that's a bunch of BS.
Sure.
So when Danny first admitted that he had been inside the apartment, he also said he only went in as far as the hallway. But then, of course, he's changing his story, backtracking.
As the police find more and more, they're like, oh, hey, yeah, actually, I did go a little further.
Now he's saying that he actually went into the lounge so that Heather could show him a catalog of curtains.
And when you say your DNA was found on something, does that mean like some kind of a liquid from your body, or could it just even be skin cells?
Yeah, it could be.
So he touched it, basically.
He touched it,
Okay.
yes. So as investigators are now looking more closely into Alisa Claps' case, they learned that on that Sunday, September 12th, 1993, the young girl walked into the church. She never walked out. There is no indication that she ever left that church. So at this point in time, nearly 2 decades passed before her family finally learned what happened to her. So it seemed initially that Alisa had just simply vanished. Though, like I said before, investigators had a very strong suspicion that Danny had something to do with whatever happened to her.
Well, basically, the community knew he did something. Just couldn't pin it on him.
So we're going forward now to 17 years after she disappeared. It is March 17th, 2017. When her body was finally discovered. It was in the attic of the very church that she was last seen. Those that were well aware that Alisa's disappearance were stunned when they realized that she had been there all along for 17 agonizing years. Her family didn't know what happened to her. She was in the very place she vanished from.
And probably where they went to go to mass every Sunday.
Yes. So workers were repairing a leak in the roof of the church when they came across a mummified and skeletonized body that had been covered by a few towels. Her folded glasses were sitting nearby. Locals felt that Alisa's body had not been found sooner due to corruption or incompetence, as the church had not been properly searched. Obviously, it had not been properly searched. These guys are going up there to repair a friggin' roof.
They're like, hey, do you know about this body up here?
Yeah. So her clothing and skeleton were examined, and cuts to her bones suggested that she had been stabbed at least 9 times from behind, mainly to her ribs, and 3 times from the front. One wound would have gone through the front of her neck to her spinal cord and could have been inflicted with a pair of scissors. And we know when he was creeping around the park watching those women in England, they did find him with scissors. Right. And of course, we know he's cutting people's hair. So her hands, which were rehydrated and examined, they showed cuts that were likely inflicted as she was attempting to defend herself to these stabbings that she was being inflicted.
Wow, science is crazy.
Yes.
Like rehydrating rotting. And,
right? Because she had basically been mummified. So Elisa's pants, bra, and underwear had been cut with scissors. Her pants were found unzipped and lowered, just as Heather's were. There were desiccated remains of a single strand of hair in each hand. Traces of hemorrhages were found to her inner thighs and breasts, which suggest a sexual element to the attack. Of course, they can't determine if she had been sexually assaulted because so much time had passed, from what I understand. And then they found a red button under her body that measured about 13 millimeters, and it was the exact dimensions and color as those that were worn on the garments by members of the church clergy. And soon a photo of the church's priest, this is Don Mimi Sabia, emerged, and in it he was missing a button from his garment. The then priest was a close friend of Danny's, and it was theorized that maybe he gave Danny the key so that he could gain access to the loft. The late Don Sabia had apparently stopped a thorough search of the church after Elisa disappeared. Like, how can you legally do that?
I don't know. If the police are going to listen, then it's not, it's just kind of like, okay, we'll stop.
It's like, I'm sorry, this girl was last seen here. We're going to search this place.
Right.
And they think maybe he stopped the search to potentially protect Danny.
Yeah.
So most damning, DNA matching the DNA of Danny Restivo was found on Elisa's clothing, but it was uncertain if it came from blood or saliva. However, given the circumstances of how many times she had been cut and the fact that he came back to his house with a cut on his hand, it's assuming that the DNA was transferred via his blood. So there was evidence to believe that Elisa's body had actually been found 2 months before the official discovery in March of 2010. According to one of the interim priests of the church, 2 cleaners discovered the body in January of 2010, but were persuaded by the Catholic Church to keep quiet until they could figure out how to handle the situation.
Oh, man.
So basically, they're saying that the leaking roof was said to be an alleged ruse to send the workmen up in March. So workmen were said to be in the attic in the mid-1990s, right after Elisa disappeared. Yeah. They had gone up and said, all we saw at the time was large piles of tiles and rubble. Yeah. So in 2010, Elisa's remains were exposed. Her glasses were folded neatly near her feet. So this suggested that the crime scene had been tampered and staged. Rubble and tile had been removed from her so that the workmen would be able to find her. Because the guys in the 1990s were like, absolutely not. No, we would have seen it. We just saw piles of tiles and rubble. Now, these guys in March of 2010 are only seeing some tiles, but clearly they're able to see her body. So that stinks,
Yeah, somebody placed her or whatever. It's just, it's clear. Like there's definitely some bad things going on here.
So basically what this did was it made many people feel that the town's most holy Trinity church cared more about its image than doing the right thing, giving Alisa Claps' family closure for what happened to their daughter.
Yeah, the most holy Trinity at that church was definitely just a name.
So despite the fact that the red button that was found under her body was not a match to the others from Don Mimi Sabia's robe, many question the role of the late priest who claimed that he did not know Danny, so he lied. Then there's photos emerging that shows him saying, oh, I don't know Danny. Okay, well then why are you at his 18th birthday party? They have pictures of him.
Let's hope that he's rotting in hell.
So Danny and, regularly attended services. So it was a blatant lie that this guy didn't know him. So many wondered, why would you lie? If you had nothing to do with this, why would you say you don't know Danny when you were at his 18th birthday party?
And you wonder what kind of relationship they had too.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? So either way, it's just gross. So Elisa's mother, this is Filomena, she is a woman of God and she felt truly let down by the church. So when her daughter's funeral was held in July of 2011, she made the decision to hold the funeral in one of the city's squares rather than in the church.
Yeah, how could you put it in the church that hid your daughter's body for years? It's insane.
For 17 years, they were grief-stricken, not knowing what happened to her.
They don't have her back. You hear all these messages of community and loving each other. It's like, no, this is all words. Like you could have proven that.
So it was 2008 when the DNA on this green towel that was found in Heather's home was a match to Danny. But even though it was a break in the case, investigators wanted more solid evidence to ensure a conviction.
Yeah, gotta find like the hammer or something, like hopefully.
So now finding Alisa's body, this was basically the last piece of the puzzle that investigators really needed, and this pushed them to make an arrest on May 20th, 2010.
Okay.
So this was when Danny was arrested in Bournemouth and charged with the murder of Heather Barnett. This is 7.5 years after her murder.
That's crazy. So long.
Yep. So both women who lived on different sides of the continent had interactions with Danny. Both were found with their clothing cut in very similar fashion, and hair had been found in their hands. Because the evidence in both cases were so similar, the judge in Winchester allowed the introduction of the evidence in Alisa's case to be used in the trial, which Danny was being referred to as the Barber of Potenza.
I don't know if that would have happened in the United States. It sounds that like reeks of something where the judge would be like, nope, we can't say for sure.
So due to the horrific nature of the murder and the fact that Danny was only 21 years old when Elisa was murdered, many people believe, and the fact that when he was 14, he tied boys up and cut them with a small knife, that he committed more murders between 1993 and 2002.
There's a great chance.
Don't forget about the fact that he was lurking in the bushes, hiding, watching women with a balaclava, filleting knife and scissors in his car with, gloves and clothing on that were waterproof when it was warm outside.
Yeah.
This is very telling that he likely had way more to do than just these two murders. So detectives also reflected on Danny's concerning behavior, like he said, when he was being monitored. He had all these incriminating items in his trunk. Over the years, he has been linked to other deaths, including a series of brutal murders in southern France and Spain. So in September of 1997, a young French-Algerian woman, this is Maktharia Shaib, was stabbed and her breasts as well as other body parts had been removed from her body, similarly to Heather. Then in 1998, Maria Helene Gonzalez was mutilated and she went missing in France. In 1999, a British woman named Yvonne O'Brien was stabbed 40 times. One of her breasts was removed while she was in Mallorca. In 2003, a 27-year-old South Korean woman named Erica Anzerman was adopted by an Italian family. She disappeared and her remains have never been found. However, they did find a photo of Erica on Danny's computer that had been downloaded. Yep.
Wow.
So, there's a lot of things that are
connecting him, like
speculation, but not definitive.
I mean, it's kind of like in the Home Alone, the Wet Bandits, like, he's removing breasts, that doesn't happen very often as far as I know, but it's like, it's kind of his calling card, what he got off on, like just sickening. And it's directly attaching him to a lot of these things.
Now we're moving towards when Heather was murdered. This is July 12th, 2002. And again, I'm saying July 12th. He has a thing with 12s. This is 4 months before Heather was murdered. A woman from the same suburb of Bournemouth was 26-year-old Jong Oki Sheen. She went by Oki. She was walking home late at night after she had been out with friends when she was just attacked in the street. She was stabbed 3 times in the back and just left for dead. Before she passed away, she was able to tell investigators that a man in a mask had attacked her. So the woman was from South Korea. She, had limited English and was basically dying in the street. So I think that prevented her from saying more. Investigators could only assume that when she said mask, that it could have been a balaclava.
Sure.
So a fresh clump of human hair was also found at the exact spot where she was stabbed.
How do you have the time to do that?
She had been stabbed with the exact type of knife that investigators found in Danny's bag when he was spying on women in the park in 2004. It was that filleting knife. The murder happened only 3 blocks from Heather's home. It took place on the 12th of the month, just as Eliza and Heather's murders had. However, after 3 trials, a man named Omar Benguit, he was a heroin-addicted petty crook, was eventually convicted for Oki's murder, but many feel that he is not the one. There's a lot of evidence in this case. I didn't want to get into it because it's like a whole other case. Yeah. But many people feel it was Danny that killed her. So Danny pleaded not guilty to Heather's murder. On November 8th, 2010, the trial date was set for May 4th, 2011. The prosecution indicated that he killed Heather in a premeditated manner, knowing fully that it would be her children who would come home to find her mutilated body. He knew the routine. He knew that she was a single mom. He had deliberately tried to remove forensic evidence that could link him to the crime. They referenced his shoes that were soaking in bleach. When the green towel was found in Heather's home, it was referenced. The prosecution speculated that maybe he used it to wipe Heather's blood from his body and then just set it over the back of the chair and simply overlooked it as he fled the scene. So during the trial, the jury also did hear about Alisa Claps' murder and the uncanny similarities between the two murders.
I think, yeah, you're like you mentioned, that's kind of the ace in the hole.
Right.
It's like he did the exact same thing. Are we going to let him get off with it again?
So both of their bras had been cut in the exact same fashion. Both of the victims' hair had been cut. However, the jury was tasked with returning a verdict for Heather's case alone. They could hear about Alisa's case, but it was only for Heather's. So on June 29th, 2011, after 5 hours of deliberation, Michael, what did the jury find Danilo Restivo?
I'm going with my emotions on this one and saying guilty as hell.
Yes, he
Nice.
was found guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison with no minimum term due to the brutal nature of the murder.
And sentenced to cuts all over his body and hopefully slicing off pieces of his body and having just people burn him alive. I think that'd be ideal.
Death by 1,000 cuts.
Yep.
So Heather's daughter, Caitlin, gave a victim impact statement and spoke of finding her mother's body. She said, "It was at that moment that I felt as if my heart had been ripped out. I was in a state of complete and utter shock, and it took months before I accepted the truth. I understood the words used, but I felt that things like this don't happen to people like my mom." And she went on to speak about the fear that she lives with as a result of that day. She's fearful about entering bathrooms. She's sure that someone must be there waiting for her. Her mom is no longer there to celebrate her successes or help her through her disappointments. She will never be able to tell her mom how much she loves her and how much she misses her. Eliza's family felt that Heather's death could have absolutely been prevented had he been arrested in Italy when they thought for sure that he had done whatever he had done.
If those piece of crap church people, the people at that specific church,
Right,
would have done something that any human, the decent human, would do, and come forward with the information that they had, why would they cover it up?
I don't know.
I guess the image to that particular
but
church.
what? So what? There's a monster that did something terrible in here. But
It's not okay by any stretch of the imagination. It's so crazy how some minds can work.
yeah. So they just felt that the church had not been searched thoroughly enough because obviously they should have found Elisa's body and linked it to Danny, that he would have never had the opportunity to travel to England to potentially have killed Oki that was murdered months before Heather.
And God knows how many other people.
God knows how many other people. I mean, that's why he was monitored 24 hours a day at that one point, because police thought he was literally on the verge of killing somebody else. This is a highly dangerous man.
Absolutely.
So the fact that Heather's 2 children will live the rest of their lives without her after finding her in such a horrible manner, Elisa's family just thinks that could have been avoided. And the fact that they felt that Danny's house was never even really searched, despite knowing that he was the last person who have seen her alive, and that he had been a 14-year-old that cut boys up and called people watching them. Peeping Tom is that escalates sometimes. So some people in Italy believe that Danny was protected since his father was the director of the National Library in Italy. There were also rumors and speculation about a church cover-up. So on November 11th, 2011, in his absence, so he did not travel to Italy, an Italian court found Danny guilty, and he was sentenced to 30 years in prison in relation to Elisa's murder. 30 years. That's
Also, why couldn't they wait a day? Do it on the 12th.
I know,
That would have been
right?
awesome. Just be oh, wait, we need to delay it one more day. And you piece of garbage, you are going to be sentenced on the day you like killing people, you piece of crap. And only 30 years, like you said.
30 years for killing a 16-year-old girl.
Yeah, you got to change those rules, Italy.
So on November 21st, 2012, the Court of Appeal altered his minimum sentence because, of course, when he was convicted in England, he was given no minimum sentence because of the brutality of the murder. Now they're putting a minimum sentence of 40 years.
Why does that happen, man?
After his lawyers argued that the judge was wrong to take Elisa's murder into consideration during the sentencing for Heather's case, and he had yet to be convicted for Elisa's murder at that point.
I mean, really, you know, when I see it on the United States side, I don't think that ever would have been allowed, you know, in most courtrooms. Because I get it as a human being, I absolutely want it allowed.
Right.
But it just seems like something that they were definitely potentially related, but you can't say factually, you know,
because he had yet to, he was innocent until proven guilty. He had yet to be proven guilty in Italy at that point in time.
So it's kind of, you know, it's definitely weighing on the side. Let's put this MFer in jail.
100%.
But I'm glad that it happened.
You know, however, the court does indicate that it is highly improbable that this guy will ever be released. And let's just hope to hell he is never released, because he is an absolute danger to society.
Yeah, if somebody could like cut his Achilles tendons or something, both of them, I think that'd be good. Just, make him immobile. I think.
A horrible, horrible, sick and deranged human being. And that is the sad story of the murders of Heather Barnett and Elisa Claps.
This poor, stupid village idiot. Too bad you didn't just like fall off a bridge or something. Instead you had to take out other people's lives.
And like I said, all those other girls I listed, who knows how many victims he may have gotten away with.
Ugh, so gross.
It is.
Thanks for remembering, Heather and Elisa. And it sucks. Like you hear stories like this, and then all of a sudden, like you might feel something on your hair in a movie theater. You're like, oh my God, like people are going to think of this and be like, is it somebody cutting my hair and like getting off on touching me? Like, where do you get, like, where do people come from where it's like, this is okay? Obviously, they don't have that stopping in their brain.
Oh yeah, there's something majorly wrong there. I mean, the guy got on a bus with a pair of scissors with the intention of cutting someone's hair and then pleasuring himself.
Well, clearly he has that fascination with the scissors because he can cut the hair and then kill them with that same scissors. Probably, like, scissors you can sharpen just like a knife.
Oh yeah,
if you have a good, like a really nice set of scissors, like with a lot of people that do quilting and stuff. Like my mom has some really nice scissors.
Well, and that's what they believe was used in Elisa's murder, were scissors.
Right.
Yeah.
That's sickening. So sorry to the families involved here.
Yeah,
hopefully Danny stays behind bars and hopefully dies soon. So
yeah, just a horrible human being.
So thank you so much for listening. I challenge you. This is Mike Pernecki's challenge to you. If you listen on an Apple phone, you can go ahead and sign up for a subscription for free for 3 days and listen to as many bonus episodes as you can.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear some records. Like also, if you're listening to us on Spotify, go ahead and leave a comment. There's comments galore. I think we got like 17 comments on the last. So let us know what you think of this case and how big of a piece of crap Danny is and whatever's on your brain. So just go ahead down, scroll to the bottom, be like, comment, just type it in. And we reply to most of them. So besides that, we've got, if you want to support this little Ma and Pa podcast, I'm Pa.
And I'm Ma.
Yeah, we try to, not have many advertisements. You won't hear it very often. Only the ones that we really choose, or, maybe picking up other podcasters just to kind of, have the community build around us. But yeah, we're not part of some big Wondery network or anything like that. We're just.
What did you say? We're a local coffee shop?
Yeah, if you skip like the Starbucks and the McDonald's coffees and you go to your local coffee shop, we're that local coffee shop. We're just like, hey, we're making espressos here and we'd love your business. We would love your business. So if you trust us, pay a couple bucks extra for our cup of coffee because it supports a local family.
That's right. And like you were saying about getting all the bonus episodes and binging for the free 3 days.
Yeah.
Like if you have a project coming up and you're going to be cleaning your house from top to bottom or taking a really long road trip or something like that, that's a good time to do it.
Great time to do it. And we also hope that you forget to cancel. So
just forget about it.
Yeah, it's fine. Just maybe just once.
Don't worry about
Just do it one time. It's going to feel great. I promise.
Be a rebel.
Yeah, exactly.
But we appreciate you guys so much for being here and listening. And we will be back. And don't forget, it's our 3rd year podiversary. Woo, woo! And we'll be back next week with another episode. And until next time.